Okay, super. Right, let's get into it then. Um, did you know that companies that prioritize marketing efforts are 13 times more likely to see a positive ROI? Well, if you didn't, you do now. And that's a statistic from HubSpot. So obviously, you're obviously very aware that marketing is an important thing. It's the reason that you're here today on this webinar. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to be focusing on, just to try and help you really get your 2021 marketing strategy in place. So the kind of things we're going to be focusing on, we're going to be talking for, it's going to be about an hour maximum. So we're going to cover as many areas as we possibly can. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than we can talk about through in an hour, but this will hopefully give you kind of the core things that you need to consider. So number one, how marketing has changed due to COVID-19 and what this means for 2021. Number two, the key areas you need to focus your efforts on. Number three, understanding your audience in more depth. Four, setting realistic objectives. Five, understanding your critical success factors. And then six, we've got a few useful tools to support your strategy creation. So a few important points. So we've catered this webinar very much towards service-based SME owners or marketing personnel. And from what I've seen of the list, that's the majority of the people in the room today. So the content's been focused around activity that you should be able to implement yourself. So basically what we're not talking about is anything deeper technical like SEO or pay-per-click or social media advertising. It's all very strategic overview type of stuff and the kind of thing that you need to be thinking about when you're putting your own strategy together. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Xpand before we go any further. We're based in Saltaire in West Yorkshire. We're a full service digital marketing agency. We've been going for 13 years. I set the business up. My background is in marketing strategy. And some of the more recognisable names that we've worked with are Lint Chocolate, Argra Restaurants, the Tetley Brewery, the Manchester Prison Service, and Girl Guiding Leeds. And in answer to most people's questions, yes, we got a little bit of free chocolate. No, we didn't get free curry. No, we didn't get free beer. And no, it wasn't to recruit more prisoners for Her Majesty's Prison Service. So hopefully that answers a few of the questions at the end. So you're joined by myself and Danni today. So like I say, my background's in marketing strategy, and Danni is our digital marketer. She specialises in everything to do with social media and strategy. Yeah, a little bit of information about the kind of stuff that we have done in the past. So a few examples. Headway Recruitment is a recruitment agency based in Bradford and Leeds. We have built the last few websites for them, did their rebrand for them. We did SEO, and in a measured 12-month period, we got them £114,000 of converted business directly via SEO. Pitts Wilson are a large electrical contractor. We've got them £200,000 worth of inquiries in the space of 6 weeks via Google AdWords. Chris Makin is a forensic accountant. We've just rebranded for him and rebuilt his website. And in a measured 24-month period, we've got him £80,000 of business directly converted from the website. And Energy Mill Gym, this was a few years ago now. We did a strategy and we branded them and we did their website. And they needed 500 members when they opened in the space of 3 weeks, and we helped them get that in 4 weeks. So that gives a bit of an indication of the kind of stuff we do. It's all about the result. And the things that we're going to talk about today lay the foundation of the approach that we took towards getting the results for these guys. And hopefully the stuff we outline is going to add value and give you guys a bit of an indication of the kind of stuff that you need to be considering. So, do you have a marketing strategy? So, the title of this is, will your 2021 marketing strategy get you where you want to go? So the question is, firstly, do you have a marketing strategy? And if you do, how big is it? Is it war and peace? If the answer to that is yes, then maybe you don't actually need to be here, or maybe you do, because one of the biggest challenges in anything to do with any kind of planning to do with business or marketing is information overload. You need to know what the key things are, the critical things that you need to do to achieve success. Many years ago, our strategies used to look like this. There were these ginormous documents that were pretty much war and peace. And over the years, we've defined it down into just much more defined plans that just make it a lot easier to follow. The flip side of it being war and peace is your marketing strategy written on the back of a fag packet. I really hope not, but if it is, then you're in the right place, because hopefully we'll be able to give you a bit of an outline of the kind of things that you need to be considering for your own strategy. So what is in a marketing strategy? I'm just going to give a really broad overview of the key things that really and the outcomes that you need as outcomes from a marketing strategy. So it has the following: it provides your long-term objectives as well as the shorter-term objectives. It lets you know, where is it that you actually want to go. It outlines your competitive advantage. What is it that gets you standing out above your competition? What is that one key thing that really makes you guys unique above everybody else? It outlines the markets and audiences to target. It outlines your brand position. So, are you the Marks and Spencer of what you do, or are you the Aldi of what you do, or anywhere in between? And it should provide a roadmap of what needs to happen and when. So in today's session, we're going to be talking around a lot of these. One of the things we're not going to be covering is competition in any major detail. Like I say, we've only got a limited amount of time. So we focused on key areas that, like I say, will hopefully bring some value to what you're doing. So let's get straight into it. How marketing has changed due to COVID-19. Now with this, when I put this part together, I thought, bloody hell, where do I actually start? What hasn't it changed? But I picked out just 3 key areas that I feel are the most important. So COVID-19 has accelerated the growth of digital. Notice I haven't put the word digital marketing in there, just digital, anything digital. If you think about when we went into lockdown, obviously the real world, just everything just shut down, and anything digital was it just went into overdrive. So put marketing aside for a second. If you think about your own usage of social media usage skyrocketed. If you think of all the likes of Netflix and Amazon Prime and all those kinds of things, the usage came up massive. Even Zoom, we're using this now. Most people didn't even know what Zoom was before lockdown kicked in. So just the digital world has just absolutely become, it was growing. We're in the midst of what I would call the digital revolution. And, what this has done is it's just accelerated our recognition and our dependence on it in a lot of ways. So the model that you see in front of you is it's our own model. It's called Solar 7. And there's 7 stages to achieving return on investment. So quickly, stage 1 is discovery, understanding where you've been, where you are, where you want to go. Stage 2 is creating your strategy, which wraps around all activity that needs to take place. Stage 3 is at the heart of the model, which is your brand and your message, making sure you've got that right. Stage 4 is your website, which is like the sun in your solar marketing system. And then stage 5 are what I call the planets, which are all the different channels that bring traffic to your website. These are not the only channels. These are just the ones that we put within the model. So think about getting to the top of Google, social media, email marketing, advertising, and PR. And content is the orange ring around each one of these. And what that means is obviously content is at the heart of what you do, but it's also the orange ring around all the channels. So for example, with social media, you could be posting all day, every day, but if you're not putting anything of any substance, it doesn't mean anything. So it's all about the message, which is why it's at the heart of what you do. Stage 6 is reviewing and testing and measuring, and that's what gets you to your return on investment. So during lockdown, we had a lot of people contacting us, really needing to push their own digital marketing. So, we were helping people get their messaging together, their websites, helping them with their social media and their SEO and email. So there's been a massive acceleration of digital marketing and a new recognition that it really is an important thing. So what does this mean for 2021? It means that someone in your organization needs to take ownership of digital marketing. If it is outsourced, there needs to be an internal understanding of what is happening and why. And the reason I emphasize this is because there's a lot of scenarios where people have just said, okay, well, you do our digital marketing and we'll just go away and not worry about it. That's not how it works. There needs to be an understanding. A good example I give is, like, I'm not a big fan of spreadsheets and accounts and stuff like that. I have an accountant. I meet with my accountant once a month, but I have a broad overview understanding of what's going on, and she tells me what the technicalities are of anything that's involved, but I still have an understanding of what's going on. So what I would really highly recommend is, if digital marketing is something you're not familiar with, I'd really recommend getting yourself, at least familiar with it. Number 2, you need a digital marketing strategy. Again, this is a big part of obviously what we're talking about today. What's the difference between a digital marketing strategy and a marketing strategy? Well, obviously, it clues in the title, it's digital. So again, it just reinforces point 1. And at the very least, if, you know, getting a bit of an understanding of, you know, how your website works and who's visiting it and how, you know, how people are using it, at the very least, I would say understand how social media works and what it means to your audience, not just what it means to you. And what I mean by that is often people make the mistake of saying, well, I don't really use social media very much. Oh no, I don't really respond to those ads. But it's not about you, it's about your audience. It's about what they actually respond to and what they don't respond to. So I've got a little statistic for you here. Oh, sorry, just 1 second. 97% of B2B marketers use LinkedIn as part of their content marketing efforts. And that's a statistic from the Content Marketing Institute. So that, obviously, the majority of the people in this room are very much business to business, even if you're not. LinkedIn is obviously very powerful. So that gives you an indication of why social media is so important. These days, I don't think it's just enough to be on there and to be a lurker. You need to be on there and just push yourself to get engaged. Digital marketing is a really important function within the business, equally as important as sales and finance and HR and operations. And it's usually massively overlooked because people are afraid of it. So that's the first point. The second point, brand trust is key. So what does that mean? People connect with authenticity. You know, what does your brand actually mean to people? There was a time when, you know, brand values was something that was reserved for the bigger companies, and social media has massively kind of really emphasized that. People will see through you. If you're saying one thing, but you're doing another, they'll absolutely see through it. And if they can't connect with your brand, they'll connect with someone else's. And this is why social media is so important. If you're being human on social media through your own personal LinkedIn and your own accounts, and also obviously having some kind of human element to what the brand values are of your organization, people will connect with that. It's not enough to tell people you're trustworthy, you have to prove it. What does that mean? How do you build trust? You know, how do you prove it? You can tell people we're really trustworthy. Trust us, you know, come and buy from us. How do you prove that? That takes me on to the next point. What does it mean for 2021? It means you need to build your reviews on Google, Trustpilot, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever social media platform you're on. We covered this a little bit in one of our other webinars that we did. And it is a bit of a challenge getting reviews in from people because it's usually not the top priority for people to actually be, you know, leaving you a review unless they're really happy or really unhappy. But the more reviews you can get, that will, you know, just support the trust. People do their homework now. We all have a phone in our pocket. We all have access to the internet. So building brand trust via reviews is one of the best ways that you can do that. So number two, know your brand values. These are the fundamental beliefs on which your business and its behavior is based. So, you know, the most common thing we come across when we hear people saying, you know, I say, right, what are your brand values? And people say, right, well, we believe in trust and integrity and honesty and quality. And I say, well, okay, fair enough, but surely all of those things should be something that you already, that should be a standard thing really with any kind of organization. So really you need to think about, you know, what are your core values? What do you believe in as the business owner or in the marketing department? What are the key things that drive it? And pull it down to maybe 3 core beliefs that, you know, you really want to drive. You know, for us at Xpand, our brand, our values are, number 1 is enjoy life and be friendly. In other words, don't be a dick. Number 2, push your creativity. It isn't just about being creative as an agency, but how can we creatively solve a problem and get to the solution that we need. And number 3 is challenge for positive results, because results is what we're all about, and we all need to challenge each other, and that's where the real growth happens. So really get to know your own values, and ensure your messaging speaks to the pain points of your audience. Connect with them. So that talks about like the emotive element. You know, what is the emotional impact of how are you solving their problem? Yes, all right, you might be helping someone make more money or save money or be more efficient, but what does that mean to them from an emotional point of view? When we work with people, if they're able to get more inquiries and get more business in, it's one less thing for them to worry about. They can afford to then, you know, pay for their kids to go to football or go on this holiday they've always wanted to go on, and obviously build their business and employ more people and so on and so on. Number 3, your audience has changed. What does that mean? It doesn't mean literally, okay, you're servicing a new audience. It means that COVID-19 has had an impact on literally everyone in the whole world. Literally, in some way, shape or form, it's changed the way that we look at things. The way that your audience make buying decisions, even if it's only slightly, it's changed. Think about your own buying patterns in terms of, say, buying clothes, obviously eating out. It's something that we've stopped, and off the back of that, that might have an impact next year on how you actually consider your own purchasing patterns. And also, people are choosing to be more supportive of local businesses. What does that mean for you? Does that mean that you're supporting more local businesses? Does that mean in terms of your own target audience, because you're local, does that mean that you need to target more local businesses on the grounds that, if you're a local business? So what does this mean for 2021? It means that you need to understand, review, if you'd already done this before and understood what their pain points were, you need to review what they are again and have a look at, how they think about things now. You need to understand what might stop them from buying from you. The most obvious thing to think is, oh, price, yeah, we're too expensive, we need to be cheaper, but it's not always that. These days, I suppose people, like I say, they want more trust. They want to know that they're working with an ethical organization. Get into their heads and think like them. And that's probably a bit easier to say than it actually is as the thing to do. So we're going to talk more about this later. It's one of the points that Danni will be talking through. So that's point number one. What has the impact of COVID-19 been on marketing? So hopefully there's a bit of stuff in there. So the key areas to focus your efforts. Now, going back to Solar 7, so obviously we've highlighted the area, and the truth is, from you looking at this model, you'll all have different scenarios. You might think, right, well, I need to start right from the beginning and really sit down and have a look at everything. A lot of what we're covering today is to do with discovery and putting your strategy together, but you might already have an amazing website. You might just not be on stage 6. You may not be measuring enough, or maybe your email marketing needs upping. Like I say, this is a bit of a broad framework of the kind of things that you can actually look at and consider, of the kind of things that you need to review. Maybe if you say you've never done any PR, it's the kind of thing that you need to consider and have a look at that, or have a look at SEO, or so on and so on. But what is the ultimate goal of what it is that you're looking for? So the model I've just given you is, great, do all these things and you're going to get a return on investment. As a marketing agency, most marketing agencies will basically focus on this part of it. So I've broken the model down a bit. You've got all the different channels that drive traffic to the website, and then that creates the inquiry. Happy days. But the truth is, like I say, a lot of agencies, a lot of marketing agencies will end there. And this is where your responsibility comes in terms of what you need to look at. And this is what we also help clients with as well. When an inquiry comes in, what it should be doing is leading to a conversion. What it should be then doing is obviously leading to an increase in your turnover. And then what that should actually do is lead to an increase in profit. And for most private sector organizations, that is the goal. We want to be profitable for whatever reason that we're choosing to be in business. But if we look at that in a little bit more detail, we'll break it down. Right, great, you're getting loads of inquiries in. Let's say you're getting 8 inquiries, for argument's sake, in a month, but you're only converting 4 of them. You're only converting 4. You've got a 50% conversion rate on average. You need to ask yourself, well, how could I have converted the other 4? How could I have converted that other 50%? Is it to do with the sales process? Do you have a process for sales in place? When the inquiry is made, are they speaking? Are you answering the phone correctly? Are you giving the right kind of information? Are you asking the right kind of questions? Are you giving the confidence to the customer, to the prospect, sorry, that you know what you're talking about? Do you have a portfolio of examples that you could give them to say, this is why we're really good? When it comes to the conversion, what kind of things could you actually be doing to support that conversion? There's a statistic that says we see between 3,000 and 25,000 marketing messages a day. Just think about the room that you're in now. Look around and there might be books there. There might be branding on your watch, on your laptop. There's messaging everywhere going at you. You need to have touched base with a message, a brand 7 times, have a need or a want for it, and then you'll take action. So if you can increase your touch points with your customers, so from the point they make the inquiry to the point they convert, there might be an average time frame of whatever it is for your business. It might be a week, it might be 2 months, it might be a year. But if you have regular touch points, the odd phone call, the odd email, give them some useful information in between, that might help them and just support that trust element. And then look at the turnover. You know, there's that old saying, turnover is vanity and profit is sanity. You know, does just the fact that you get an increase in turnover mean a good thing? Well, the truth is what you need to be looking at is an increase in your profit, and what that actually means to the business. So the last two are obviously very heavily connected. So like I say, it doesn't just stop at putting more water into the bucket, because if you could have holes in the bucket if your conversion process isn't right and you haven't worked out what your profits are and what's profitable and how much time you're spending on stuff isn't right, then that's the kind of thing that you need to make sure you're looking at. So in addition to this, now this steps into the realms of what I'm going to talk about here isn't just marketing, it's actually kind of broader general business success. And this is something that I had a bit of a light bulb moment. It's actually really obvious this, but I had a bit of a light bulb moment during lockdown when I was thinking about some of our suppliers. And I broadly put it down to 3 key areas for business success. One is you obviously need to have the skill set. You need to be good at what it is that you're doing. Number 2 is you need to be organized at what it is that you're doing. And number 3 is you need good communication. Now, this probably seems really obvious, but you'd be amazed at how many times I've come across scenarios where someone's really good at what they do, but their organization and communication is terrible. And off the back of that, I've stopped using them. So I just really want to hit this point home. And really, I mean, the comms, the communication part of it comes into the marketing side of things. Are you letting people know what's going on throughout and what it is that you're doing, and telling the world, you know, what it is that you do? If I put this into a Venn diagram, so we can call this model S.O.C. I call it pull your socks up. So if you think of this as a Venn diagram, and obviously, you know, each circle represents each one of the 3 things I've just spoken about. If you just have 2 of these, you're going to be missing out. If you're just really good at what you do and good with organization, but you're not communicating, then quite frankly, you're missing a trick, because somebody else will be doing that. The happy spot where they meet in the middle, and the real happy spot is when skill set, organization, and communication are absolutely on point. So that's something I feel is just worth mentioning. I've spoken about this at a couple of other webinar events, and it really was something that resonated with the audience. So I think it's something worth really highlighting. And the way I've laid this out as well is skill set is at the top, and organization and communication are at the bottom. So it's almost like they're the foundation of what needs to happen. It's something I studied business for years, and you know, the penny only dropped. I mean, even I've been guilty of not being great at organization and communication. It happens to us all. But once you get those things on point, then happy days. That is what's really going to push you forward. So number 3, understanding your audience. Danny, I'll hand over to you.
Help if I unmuted myself, wouldn't it?
That would be useful.
Okay, so yeah, a lot of businesses don't actually have any kind of formal audience persona created. So a lot of them kind of just stab in the dark at it. And so what we do when we're working with any of our clients is we actually start by putting together an audience persona for them. So there's 6 key things that you need to consider when you are creating these, well, more than 6, but there's some other areas as well. So you need to have a think about their background. So this is literally what's going on in their life. So, you know, general background. So not just stuff to do with your business or, you know, what they might buy, but actually who they are as a person. You need to think about their identifiers. So these are things that are key to them. So personality traits, things like whether they are caring, whether they are compassionate, whether they use social media proficiently, whether, you know, lots of different examples of an identifier. then you need to think about the goals. Jag, you need to catch up.
All right.
The goals. So these can be anything that this person might have as a whole life goal. So, you know, you all have goals. You'll have business goals, but you'll also have your own personal goals as well. So these are going to be different depending on the person. So, and your kind of, you know, your goal as a business is obviously going to hopefully link in with their goals. Then we kind of drill that further down into what their primary challenges are. So think about what it is that's actually stopping them from purchasing. What are their pain points? And these could be as simple as that they don't really understand, they don't have time, they don't have money right now. There's lots of different options that these could be. And then we look at sources of information. So where would that person go to find information about what they're interested in? What kind of topics that they might choose to engage with and read about at these sources of information. So these could be, you know, for example, if they're a parent, then they potentially are going to want to read about parenting, especially in lockdown. They might want to read about hints and tips and surviving lockdown with toddlers, or, you know, things like this. So, and then finally, Jag, you need to skip on, please. Thank you.
All right.
What all this tells you in relation to your marketing. So everything that we learn about, what message you need to be thinking about when you are communicating with this customer. So we'll give you an example of one that I've created recently. So some of you might have seen in the media recently about Xpand, we are working with Girl Guiding Leads. So I've put together 4 personas for them, and this is one of them. This is their target customer in terms of the young volunteer. So they're looking to recruit more volunteers. One of the scenarios that we're looking at is that person potentially assisting them with social media. So this is Amy. So what we've done, you can see the background at the top there, just explains a bit about her as a person and her situation. So it talks about how she just finished university. She has just done her sports degree. She's struggling to get a position because everybody's in the same position with the pandemic. Everyone wants to obviously work. And there's a lot of people looking for the same jobs. So she's struggling in that sense. She enjoyed working with the girls and boys on her coaching course, where she was obviously going into schools and doing a bit with that as well. So she'd like to consider that. So really thorough kind of understanding of that person's background and their life right now. The identifiers you can see there, just picked out some things that are key to her: caring, the proficient user of social media, and she wants to make a difference. Her goals, so like I said before, they are what she's wanting to do. She wants to make a difference to women in sport in the future. That's her key goal in her life, is to be that person that becomes an inspiration to girls in sport. So like women in football and all of that side of things. Her primary challenges are what we said: a CV lacks any kind of experience, and she's struggling against other people in her situation. Lockdown is a primary challenge for her right now. It's affecting her starting her career and moving on. And a couple of other things there to think about. Sources of information, so what she watches, what social media platform she's using, does she follow certain influencers? It's not just about the platforms, it's what they do on them too. So things like Twitter, do they follow hashtags? Do they read the news on LinkedIn? You know, there's lots of different sources of information on each of these individual platforms. Facebook groups, community groups, things like that as well. So thinking outside the box in that sense as well. It's not just putting TikTok, it's actually going deeper than that, and what actually they do. Blogs, what kind of blogs do they read? Have a think about that. Topics again, so her kind of topics would be things like women in sport. You know, it might be stuff to do with keeping her skills updated with a coaching. So coaching is one of these roles that's changing all the time. So keeping on top of that for her is important. So a lot of information and topics about that. And then a point there that we do look at as well is influencers. So who these people might follow on social media or might be influenced by in terms of celebrities as well. So just something to think about there. Over on the right side, we always, this is where it's really important to get inside the head, like the mindset. And you really do, like when I was writing this, I really became Amy. Like I honestly believed I was Amy. I was in her head completely. And you really have to do that to understand what your audiences want from you as a business. So you can see there that I've just wrote that little paragraph about what she might be thinking right now and how she might be feeling. And that will help you kind of create the message because you understand how she is feeling, and there's a real emotional value to it. Underneath there, there's the demographics, so just the basic information: age, role, status, location, education, and family. Now, this, obviously, that's in business to business, that would be what we call firmographics instead. So it's kind of a little bit more detailed, but ultimately, even in business, we are still selling to people. So that person that you are selling to will still have all of these identifiers and will still, you know, people do buy from people regardless of whether it's business to business or business to B2C. So then we kind of look at all of this and we ask ourselves, what does it tell us? What does all of this tell us? And what can we do as a business to actually support Amy? And then, like, once you've got these, you really need to believe that every time you write a piece of marketing or every time you write anything, you are thinking about Amy when you do that. And you can just call that person by that name. And we do now when we talk to Girl Guiding, we refer to these people as Amy, as Luke, as Tasha. You know, they have real people, to the point where Girl Guiding asked me if they were real people because they genuinely thought they were, but they're just in my head. And another really key point is that it's not just you as a business owner that needs to do this. It's really important, and it will really help your employee kind of engagement and advocacy, to ask the people on your front line who they think Amy is as well. So get everybody in the team involved. You know, it could be a really good opportunity to have a bit of an hour's mind map with members of your team and just ask them what they think the identifiers are for whoever you decide to call your person, and really go at it. And you'll be surprised at what comes back. And then you've got something then as a base for 2021 to refer back to and to keep checking, because like Jag said, it will change, things will change, sources of information will change, pain points will change. So once you've set them, they're not just in stone. You do need to keep referring back to them. Okay.
Super, thank you, Danny. Apologies, the graphic hasn't come out great. It hasn't rendered out amazingly well. So apologies for that, but it gives you a bit of an overview on everything. And I'd put it down to Danny. Danny's known for giving technical problems in Xpand, so
I can't even deny it.
Even though it was my fault. Anyway, moving on. So number 4, setting realistic objectives. So what kind of objectives have you set for 2021? The classic, I love to quote from a credible source. So my credible source for this webinar is Del Boy. This time next year we'll be millionaires. You know, is that your objective? If it is, great, brilliant. You know, if that's the scenario. But the truth is, what I would say is, your objectives need to be smart. So this might have been something that you've come across before. So they need to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. So when you're setting your objectives, the key things that you need to consider, the most common thing we come across when I'm having a discovery session with a client and I say, right, tell me, right, where do you want to be in 12 months' time? And they might say, oh, I don't know, we want to have sold this many units. And I'll say, well, is that realistic? And they'll say, yeah, I think it could be. But then when I ask them how many units they're currently selling at this moment in time, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect. So what you really need to look at is where you are at this moment in time associated with whatever your objective is, whether it's selling units or turnover or profitability or how much time you spend on a certain thing. Take a snapshot of what the thing is where you are right now. You have to know where you've been, where you are, in order to know where you want to go. You need to look at the resources available. If you say you want to double turnover and you don't have the capacity, whether that's in machinery or people, hours, man hours, or IT equipment or whatever, you need to consider how much time you actually have and what the structure looks like around you and what it's going to cost you in your time and whatnot to put that together. And then what the objective actually means to the business. I come across this a lot where people will say, right, well, we need a new website. And we'll say, okay, why? Because, you know, our website is crap and it just needs to be new and shiny and look great. Why? Because the competition have got one. Why? And, you know, really, you know, obviously, ultimately, your website should be there as a lead generating tool or something to support the credibility for inquiries to come in. So you'd really need to think closely about what it is, you know, when you're setting your objectives, what it is that you're actually looking at. So rather than saying, I want more sales or profit, that's obviously what we're all after, consider, I want to increase revenue from XYZ service by 15% by May the 31st, 2021. So is that specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and timed? Yes. And that's what you need to do. You need to put a time frame against it, put a measurement against it, and just make sure it's specific to you know, key things. And it isn't just about, you know, one objective. You can have a series of objectives. So that's something that's really important to point out. And then number 5, understanding your critical success factors. Now, what are critical success factors, otherwise known as CSFs? They are the vital few activities that really drive success for your business. So I would look at them. So we've talked about your objectives. You might have, I don't know, 6 core objectives in the business or 10 core objectives. But really the critical success factors is narrowing them down even more. They are the things. How do you know if what you're coming up with is a critical success factor? You need to ask yourself, if I don't achieve this critical success factor, will my business be successful? It's what it says on the tin. It's critical to your success. What is critical to your success? So I'm going to give you an example roadmap. This is just an example of the kind of thing that we might put in front of a client at the end of a strategy. So we've done loads of homework around every part of their marketing and their competition and their audience and all that stuff. And we've outlined, right, these are all the things that we recommend you need to do. And this is the kind of the timed outline based on what you've told us you want to achieve. So this is, like I say, this is just a sample. It's been made up, but it's you know, it could be a real thing. You know, it's not unrealistic in the way it will be achieved. So you know, March and April, refresh the brand and brand guidelines, get the website planning, photography, website content in place with a view to have the website live within 4 months, roll out the brand identity, get your social media posting going out there, and then, you know, get your SEO and pay-per-click and PR going on an ongoing basis. And then the stuff in grey is the stuff that we normally highlight in grey if it's stuff that we can't control but happens in-house. So in this case, I've just as an example put networking, internal rebrand presentation, implement your sales process, account management, and so on and so on. So, you know, without any kind of information to back this up, this doesn't mean anything. And typically when we deliver a strategy, there's all kinds of points that refer to each one of the key things that needs to happen here. These aren't critical success factors. When you look at this is just really, there's loads of information on there. What you need to do is split them out into what the key areas are. Like I said, take a step back and look at it as an overview. So if I give you an example that connects to these. So example, critical success factors. Number 1, focused business development. A bit obvious, right? Well, yeah. But it depends on what it is that's critical to the success of what you want to achieve. So if you think about it in relation to the example I've just given there, here we're talking about a brand refresh, getting the website going, and then getting the SEO. So social media and SEO and PR going. All of those are for the purpose of focused business development. They'll generate inquiries to the website, and then off the back of that, the business development needs to kick in and obviously work on converting them. Regular account management. So once the client is in and they're on board, you need to make sure you're speaking to them regularly and giving them useful information on the kind of stuff they want. So again, account management is outlined here. And then measuring productivity and staying within estimates. So for example, if you said, well, we're a service business and we estimate this will take 30 hours to do the job, you need to make sure it's staying in 30 hours, because if it takes 60 hours, I would imagine there's no profit in there. So these are examples of critical success factors that you need to have on your wall or somewhere. And then for each one of these, you can actually narrow down the key things that need to happen. So let's say, for example, going back to focus business development. Okay, again, like I say, that's what everybody wants in a business. But what does that mean? What are the key things that need to happen? So what are the goals? Okay, focus business development. I know I need to get a new website. I know I need to get SEO going. I know I need to get my PR going. All of that needs to drive traffic. You need to think about when these things are going to happen, so you put a time frame against it. You need to think about who is going to be responsible for looking after the action points against that. Then you need to think about how are you going to measure the success of the critical success factor. So in this case, it'll be, right, okay, the website needs to go live by May 2021. We need to get our SEO and pay-per-click and social media running on it. And then by December 2021, we'll be measuring it by Google Analytics, and we'll look at how many people visit the site and how many inquiries come from the site, and then obviously how much that turns over and how much profit we've made from it. So this is a really broad step back view of the key things that need to happen in your business. And like I said, this is quite broad, but there might be things in your business, there might be something that's really broken. You might be in a scenario where you're in a very fast moving industry, and the critical success factor could be you just need to stay on top of what the newest technology is and what's happening in the world right now. That's a scenario for us. Digital marketing moves all the time, so we know we've always got to stay on top of being educated on what's hot and what's not. So they're your critical success factors. And then finally, we're going to talk about a few useful tools that will actually help you in terms of implementing your strategy. So there's two that we're going to give you at this stage, and we're going to give you another one later on. One thing we haven't spoken about at all, or barely, is in terms of looking at your competition, because obviously we've only got a limited amount of time. But I'll pass over to Danny to talk about Rival IQ.
Okay, so Rival IQ is a great tool for competitor research. It's a free tool. There is an element of a purchasing tool that can take it deeper and can do things like social listening and things like that. But the free one is a really good place to start. What it allows you to do is actually put in a competitor's social media handle. So for example, if they've got a Facebook page, you can cut and paste their Facebook URL page into Rival IQ and do the same with your own. And it'll give you a 2-week comparison of what they've posted, how many followers they have, what their engagement is, lots of other insights into what they're doing. There's no limit. I haven't found a limit on it. Pfizer, who does some of them for us, she does have every now and again, it'll stop her doing it. But it hasn't done that with me, and I must have done thousands of these. So for you guys, just running it on your own competitors, you shouldn't see an issue at all. And what it does is when you've put in the information, it emails it through. It does Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but can't do LinkedIn, unfortunately, as that one's a protected site, data closed for some reason. But it's a good place to start, and it'll help you understand what they're posting and where you need to kind of aim for potentially.
Okay, so that's number one. Now the next one is a really, really, really obvious one. Oops, I can't change it. Where's it gone? And it's Google. Who would have thought? Google's a great tool. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because, again, talking about competition, it's just something that's just such an obvious thing. think about your competition, Google the kind of words that you want to be found for and look at who's on there. Another great one is to actually look at Google News, and you can actually search your competitors' names and you can see the kind of stuff that they're actually coming up for in Google News. And that will help you by, if you look at the stuff that's going on Rival IQ with the social media, and have a look at what's going on in Google, how they rank on Google, and what other people are saying about your competition. And what the press are saying about your competition and what other websites they feature on. That's actually 3 elements of the Solar 7 model. You've looked at social media, you've looked at PR, and you've looked at the Google review, you've looked at search engine optimization, where they actually rank organically. So again, it's such an obvious thing, but I think you'd be amazed at how many times I actually come across people who don't even consider it as a tool or think of it as something to actually, be able to use. We've got one additional downloadable tool, which I'm going to give you the link for in a second. But before we do that, we're just going to have a quick recap. So we're coming close towards the end before we take questions. So number one, so we've talked about how marketing has changed due to COVID-19, just giving a brief overview on that. The key areas you need to focus your efforts to have a look at. Understanding your audience in more depth, setting realistic objectives, and understanding your critical success factors. And then obviously we've just given a few useful tools to support your strategy creation, and we're going to give you one more. But before we do, we're just going to ask you, now that we get into we're pretty much at the end of the webinar, Danny's just going to post in the chat a link to a SurveyMonkey survey. If you could just fill in, just take literally 30 seconds while we're on the call and just fill that in for us, please. That would be great. It's this kind of feedback that helps us improve what we're doing for the next set of webinars. So I'll give you all 30 seconds. If you just click on the link, fill it in, and just type in done when you've done it, that would be great.
Now we need the elevator music.
Do you want to give us some elevator music, Danny?
People are doing it really quickly, actually, to be fair. Getting lots of duns. Got 11 duns, 12 duns. Oh, there's loads coming through.
Super. Thank you for that, guys. Okay, so in terms of the final downloadable tool, it is a strategy download tool. So you can get this on our website, and Danny, if you could post the link in the chat for the specific page. So this is actually a downloadable tool. You can go on there, and it's a PDF, and it'll give you a framework for the kind of things that we've actually spoken about today. And you can use that as a bit of an outline. It's got a bit of a grid on there for you to be able to put your stuff in terms of your objectives, and it just gives prompts, and it gives an example of the kind of things for the prompts, talking about vision and talking about your audience and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that as an outline will actually something that will help you in terms of forming your strategy for 2021. So that's the final tool. And then finally, before we go on to answer any questions that anyone has, we have, over the last year, we've delivered a series of webinars. So all of these are on our website. So Danny, you've already posted the link. You're already on it. So if you have a look on there, all of these webinars are recorded. The recordings are on there. We've got the slides on there, and we've also written them out as well. The top left one is 7 steps to becoming a LinkedIn All-Star that Danny ran. Danny has been LinkedIn trained. Her background is in recruitment, so she actually took training from LinkedIn themselves. So if it's something that you're not very familiar with, you can go back and you can actually watch that, and it'll give some useful tips. The one on the top right, 5 ways to convert your website visitors into customers. So obviously your website is at the center of the Solar 7 model. So that, again, that's one that you can watch, and that will help support when we're talking about conversions and inquiries. Have a watch of that and have a look at if your website is, if there's anything that you can take from that. We've got on the bottom left 6 post lockdown marketing tactics. So this one was done, I think, around May, June time, just before we were released out of the first phase of lockdown. And still a lot of it is actually very relevant now. So there's useful stuff in there that actually overlaps with some of the stuff I've talked about. And then the most recent one that Danny did a couple of weeks ago was LinkedIn, a couple of months ago, sorry, was LinkedIn fear factors and how to overcome them. So yeah, again, there's a lot of stuff in there. And going back to the very first statistic I gave you, that 90%, 97% of marketers use LinkedIn, I would highly recommend, if you're in the B2B arena, have a watch of these, all of these webinars, but specifically these two to do with LinkedIn, because I'm sure you'll gain some value. We have very good feedback on them. And then also this webinar as well is being recorded, and this will also be placed onto the website as well. So finally, thank you guys. If you have any questions, let's connect. You can email me at jag@xpandmarketing.co.uk or email Danny at danny@xpandmarketing.co.uk. If you like what you've seen today, we would absolutely love if you could give us a LinkedIn recommendation or a Google review or both. That's obviously how we get our name out there. So please do tell other people. So thank you guys. Right, okay, so we've got, 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions at all?
Do you want me to unmute people or?
I think if you could just type them into, all right, yeah, well, if you want to, let's have a look. Do we have any questions typed in there?
I'll talk at once.
I'll talk at once. No questions? Okay. Well, no questions. I've obviously just been so unbelievably thorough that all your strategies are going to be amazing. So yeah, in that case, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for coming along, and yeah, hopefully see you at the next webinar.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Elevator music again. It's
That's isn't it?